A front-end application will only take you so far. For example, here we have an absolutely beautiful website that I made for my editor. However, it's not functional, and the most that this will do is let the user just see what is going on. On the other hand, by adding a backend and database to your application, you can make sites functional so that you can maybe create a software as a service company or allow your app to do more things than it would in a static site. For example, we could have something like user authentication where we could track the user. So if they ever buy anything, we know who it is exactly. And what we will be building is obviously a front end to get the user's input. And our goal in this video is to take whatever the user puts in. So let's say we put like an input here where the user puts in a title for a movie. We want this data to be stored and remembered in the database so that we can use it or, make statistics or call it in the future for any sort of data that we need. And most of our time will obviously be spent here building out the database and building out the APIs to store the user's input. However, I know it's a little bit scary, but don't worry, we will do everything step by step right from the beginning. And with that being said, let's get into the tutorial. And once we're in our VS Code, we can get started with building out our application. And the beginnings of any Next.js app or React app starts with actually creating the app. So to run and create a Next.js application, we just need to run npx create next app at latest and the name of our app. So let's just call it DB for database for short. And do we need TypeScript? Yes. ESLint? No. Tailwind? Yes. SRC? No. App router? Yes. Import alias? No. And after that, it could take some time to load, but there we go. We got it real quick. And so once we have that, we have everything we need here for our Next.js application. But what we don't have is the Prisma database. So we need to set that up by installing and setting up Prisma. And to do that, we need to go into our database like this. So CDDB, and actually let me clear this up so you can see more clearly. So we need to go into CDDB and run npm install -d Prisma and just hit enter on that. And while still staying in here, let's also run npm install at prisma/client, just like this. And so as of now, you should have a package.json with Prisma installed. And if there's nothing there, then please check out the Prisma documentation, which I will leave below. But everything should be up and running right now. And once we're in our database, we just need to open up a folder in the DB, and let's just call it lib. And open in here, and we need to run db.ts. Basically, we have to import the Prisma client from Prisma, which will allow us to directly talk to the database from the front end and the back end. You'll see when we're working on the API how powerful this is. We'll basically import the database from here so that we can tell the API to store this data into this type of model or database. So it's quite a big part of it. It's basically the link, and it's not a lot of code. To get started, we just need to write import Prisma client like this from /Prisma client. And then here we need to write declare global, open that up. And in here, let's just write var Prisma client or undefined, just like this. Oops, let's get rid of that. And finally, we need to export const the database equal to global this dot Prisma or new Prisma client, just like that. And actually the last part is an if process.env.node _env does not equal to production, then global.this equals to database. And so basically what we're doing here is we're importing the Prisma client, which in its obvious reasons is allows us to talk to the Prisma client where we can store again and directly talk to the database. Okay, this is what we will be using a lot in our discussion, if you could say, with the API and the database. So again, this is very important. Well done, we have that finished. And we can actually now run the terminal, and within here, we can see if our database works. So we just need to go back into our DB like this, and let's just run npx prisma init, just like this. And in here, we can see that you can open it, set steps. Okay, cool. So it created a Prisma database, which is awesome. This is exactly what we want. And it created a database URL. And in the database URL, this is what we will be working on next. However, this will allow us to internet-wise post our database onto a third-party tool, which we actually need so that everything is set up correctly. And you may be saying, how do we get a database URL? And to do that, we need to go to a third-party tool called NeonTech, and we will set that up real quick. We can just go to neon.tech like this. And once you're logged in, we have a couple of questions that we need to answer. So let's just call this DB. And in the database name, we don't even have to answer this, I don't think. And put the location or region where it's closest to you. So I am closest to East Ohio. So I'm just gonna pick that. And once we have that, we can press that. And essentially, this is the connection string that we need, but not this specifically. We need to go to, let's see, Prisma over here, env, and we need to grab all of this in here. So let's just open up this like this, and we can see everything that we need to copy. So let's just copy everything in here. Again, we selected Prisma as the connection string. We have the schema Prisma and the env file. So let's just copy this, go back into our Visual Studio Code, delete everything in here, and paste this. And let's just remove this just in case, which I don't think we will need this. However, it's quite important to have. And I think we forgot. Oh, okay, I see. So make sure to hide it. So go back and let's just do this again. And there we go. We have everything that we need to. So let's just delete this and this. And make sure you do not delete anything in the Prisma schema, because we will absolutely need everything here for the creation of the database. As you can see here, we're grabbing the env file and the database URL from it. So we're grabbing the database URL from here. Well done thus far. We have set up the Prisma database. And as of now, we just need to create a model where we create exactly what we need so that the front end can talk to the back end. And to do that, we just need to go into our schema Prisma, and in here we can create our model. So what do we need and what are we creating? In a larger scale application, for example, for my coding platform, I have a bunch of models. For example, I have a user model where I have to store the user's name, email, and password. I also have a course model where I have the course ID, the course name, the course images, the course videos. We're basically telling the database that this is what we will be storing, and listen to this from the front end when we do bring that stuff from the front end and store it in the back end. So in here, right, let's just create a model course. So let's say we're creating a course platform and we need to store a couple of things, right? For example, we may need the ID of string as well as the maybe course name and call that string as well. And one important thing to see here, we actually need to go back in here and call an ID just like this, and an at default of QUID. So we're basically telling it that this ID belongs to course and course only. And so what is really going on here? Let's just actually call this title so it's a little bit better. But what is going on here? So what this ID is telling us is that the course can be identified by a unique identifier. That's it. Okay, so that's not too bad, I hope. And on the other hand, we have a title string here, which allows us now to store titles into the database. So maybe when it's time to work on the front end, which we will do, we can tell Prisma that we want this exact piece of input from the user to go into this thing called title, which is located in our model course. And to see if everything is working, we can go into our terminal, go into our database, and we can run npx prisma generate. And then to make sure everything is working, let's just do npx PrismaDB push. And after every change we make, we have to run this, but npx prisma generate just loads everything for the first time, so we don't have to do that again. And as of now, okay, we can check out if our database is working. And to check out if it's working, let's just go back into our Neon console. And if we refresh, hopefully we can see if it works. Let's go to our databases. We can go to, okay, we're here. So We can go, where is it? Tables. And in here, you can see we have a course table. This is exactly what we need. You can see we have the ID as well as the title, just like we saw in our model over here. We have the ID, we have the title. Well done. We've set up the database and we can get started on the real nitty-gritty, which is working on the front end and taking that data from the front end, using an API to store it in the back end, and remembering everything that we need. And so to do that, let's just first delete what we do not need. So we don't need this, we don't need this, and let's just clear this up so we can know exactly what we need to do. So let's firstly run our NextJS application, and let's just go into our local host just like that. And as of now, you should have the NextJS application open like this, and you can actually delete this Neon console because we do not need it. And we can get started with building out the front end. And so since this is a very basic application, I'm just going to utilize the main page of the Next.js application. So in here, I just need to remove the main div like this and run a div. And in here, we can just write hello. We can see here, hello, no problem at all. So what we will be doing in the front end is obviously we have a model course. So obviously in this sort of front end where we will be creating an input that tells the user to enter the course title, for example, and we will be taking that course title that the user inputs and putting it into the model courses, which has a title. And so to do that, we need a couple of things. The first thing we will be using is shadcn.ui. I know that this is a UI library, but in my opinion, it's also an organization library that allows us to manage any sort of data that the user inputs. And you'll see in a second why I love this so much, but if we go to installation Next.js, we can just install shadcn.ui. And in here, we need to just open up the database and run npx shadcn.ui at latest in it. Now, for me, I don't know why the at latest does not work, so I'm just gonna run it like this, but it's just npx shadcn.ui at latest. And we can just run TypeScript yes, default, slate, and yes, yes, yes. Just keep going. Perfect. And by the way, this is at ui.shadcn.com. It's the best, okay? So there we go. Okay, it's a little bit odd that changed colors, but that's totally fine. We're not too worried about the design. And while we're still here, let's just clear up everything. And we need a couple of things from shadcn. The first thing is the shadcn UI add input. So we need the input. Just run yes. And we also need npx shadcn UI add form. These are the two main things we will be using. And so as of now, we can just leave it at that for the installations. We will need some things for talking to the API. However, for now, that's okay. We can just set everything up. At the top here, let's just open up a use client. And we have a couple of things. So first things first, we need to import the use form from React hook form. This comes with Next.js. We also need to import Axios from Axios. We also need to import use router from Next router. And mainly we need to import, open this up like this, from @/components/UI/form, just like that. And in here, we need to import form, form control, form description, form field, form label, form item, and finally form message, just like that. And obviously we need to import the input from @/components/input. And where we're getting this is from our components. Everything was in here when we installed shadcn.ui. It's automatically put into here. So that's where I'm grabbing all that from. And so as of now, we just need to do a couple of things. So let's just get our onSubmit function ready. So const onSubmit is equals to async. Leave that empty for now. And in here, let's just do console.log submit just for now. And I'll explain more in a bit on why we need the onSubmit, but let's just finish creating the rest of the front end. Let's run a class name of PT40, and I promise we're not gonna have too much designs because I'm not gonna focus on that too much. However, here's where we will begin with the process of the form creation so that we can store that stuff in the back end. So we need to create the big form. So the form from /components, open that up like that. And in the form, we actually need to go into it, space this out, and open up the form like this. And within here, we're still having an error because we have not done this. We need to open up a regular form like this with the onSubmit function of form.handle submit, just like that. And why we are getting this error is because we have not created our schema for the form. That's nothing to worry about. Let's just keep going for now, and then we can go back to that once we get started on that. And so we need to create the input, right? So that we can store the title, right? And to do that, we just need to go into here and run a form field like this. And this will be a self-closing tag, okay? It does not have two, so make sure that's the case. And I think I spelled form field wrong, so let's see what's going on here. Form field like this. We need to write control is equals to form.control. Just like that. And I'm realizing right now that we need to work on the form thing. So let's just work on this right now, okay? So we need to go in here and write const form is equal to use form like this. And it's good for now. So let's just keep it at this so that we don't have as many errors as we need to. And in here, I actually made a mistake. It's on submit, not just submit. And in here, we're missing the render. Cool. So we can actually just go back into our form field. And within here, we can name this whatever we need. So name, we can call this title. And we need to obviously render the field. So it's like this, then the curly, so it's the curly, then the rounded, then the curly brackets. Okay, so curly, rounded, curly, and within here, we need to do the field and open that up like this. And within here, we can have the form item, form label. Let's go down over here like this, of title. Finally, the form control, input with the field. And we can actually have a placeholder just so we know what's going on. So let's just call this course title, okay? And I know that this seems like a lot of code for just a singular input. However, this will allow us to, look at that voice crack, allow us to manage the data that is in here much easier. Because in a regular form, if we're just using, just this basic form over here without the form from components UI, it's much more difficult to grab that data. We have to do a lot more steps. I just find that this is way easier to manage. Plus, it looks really good. But you can still do it without it. You just have to look at how to do it. It's not that different, but I just like doing it this way. So hopefully you're okay with that. And finally down here, we need to obviously have a button to submit. So submit just like this. And in here, we can just have a background of black and text white, just so we know that this is a button and a P of 4. You don't have to follow this, I know. But whatever, looks okay. I'm gonna round it just so it looks kind of okay. And a margin top of 4. And okay, right now we have the button, and obviously we need one more thing in the button, and it is type equals to submit. So we know that this is a submit button, nothing else. And so as of now, we have a button that does nothing, okay? It's just there. This is just a front end. How can we make this functional? We need to install Zod. This is a third-party tool installation thing, I don't even know what to call it, that allows us to manage user data from a form or from a piece of front-end code and take that data and put it wherever we need to. It just makes it much easier to grab data. And so to install it, we need to run npm install -- save Zod, just like this. And it should work by now, but if we go back, we can just import everything like this as Zod from Zod, just like this. In our schema over here, we need to go within our home function and we need to actually create a schema. We can call this form schema like this. And in here, so z.object, just like that. And we're getting an error because this should be z, just like this, okay? So it's not zod, it's z, my bad guys. And open up this over here, this object. And in here, we have the title is equal to z.string, just like this, and a min of 1. And within here, we can just run like this with a message of title is required. So what are we doing here, okay? And this is all important for the backend, we are managing the user input. So if the user misses we're saying minimum of 1, but we can have a minimum character. So this is min, how many characters is the minimum, okay? If the user does not put anything in here, we will want a message from the code saying that the title is required. And that is exactly what it will do. And I just realized we don't actually need this in here. We can actually have it above the home, just like that. And within our form, okay, we need to just remove this and we need to work on the form. And to do that, we have the use form and we need to remove that. And within here, we need to run z.infer type of form schema, just like that. Close that up like this. And then open this with a resolver of Zod resolver, which we have to install. So let's just get that over with. Form schema, comma, default values of title, and it's nothing. And to install Zod resolver, let's just go back into Zod resolver npm and hook form slash resolvers. And we need to run npm install at hook form resolvers. So let's just go back into our code, into our terminal, sorry, and run npm install hook forms resolvers. And if we go back in here, we should not have the error anymore by importing Zod resolver. Oops, import, just like that. And there's no more errors, which is exactly what we need. So what is going on here, okay? We are essentially telling this piece of code that we are using a form from Zod with the form schema. So this is the schema with the title. And we're telling it that the default value is null. So this allows us to track what piece of input that the user is putting in. And so still, this is not functional. There's nothing going on here and it is not storing anything. We're not doing anything. So how do we fix this? Well, we have everything in place, but we need to work on the onSubmit function, right? And so to do that, we need to remove this over here. And in the async of our onSubmit function, we need to run values just like this. Open this up with the z.infer type of form schema. Close that up. And we're basically, okay, grabbing the form schema, which is this, which is the title, which we are tracking in our input over here. And within our onSubmit, we can run console.log values just like this. Actually, let's do values like this and values like this. So hopefully by now, we can actually see, if we open this up, we can hopefully see if it's working. So let's just go into here, let's just press this, and perfect. You can see that when we click submit with the VV, whatever it is, it's console logged in here. This is awesome because now we know that if we want to send this to an API or the database, it will work. And so to do that, we need to remove the console.log. And within here, we need to write a try catch block, just like this. And in the error, we can just run console.log error, just like this. And in the try block, we need to write const response is equal to await Axios, which we imported before, dot post to an API. So /API/ let's just write courses just like this, as well as the values that we will be sending. And so in this onSubmit, we are grabbing the user's input that he put into here. Okay, we are grabbing the value of the input and we are sending it to API courses, which we will work on next, where in there we will grab the input, write some code to store it into the back end. And I know if this is a little bit confusing, it's totally fine, but essentially we created a way to track the title. We are tracking it here by the form handle submit in the form. And within here, we have the input where we are submitting it through a button submit. And so what we need to do next is in our app, we need to do API. And what do we call this? API courses. So API courses, or is it course? Courses. And in here, within the courses, we need to write route.ts. And this is the API that we will use to talk directly to the database. So we have the front end, which is the inputs and the form and the ZOD to manage the title and the inputs. We have the backend, the database, where we have the Prisma and the model, which has the courses and the title there. And the API is the middleman, where we will be grabbing the stuff from the front end and posting that into the back end. And so to do that, let's just open this up like this. So because it's a backend, we don't have to worry about the looks. And we need to import next response from next server, as well as we did in the first few steps, import DB from @/libdb. This is the most important thing, okay? It's the most important thing. You cannot do anything without this import. So in here, we have to create a post function. So export async function post. Do this with a request of request and open this up over here. And in here, we need to write a try catch block. And in the error, as per usual, we're just going to console.log an course error like this, just so we know that it's a course error with the error on the side. And we can actually return a next status. So write this as the return statement if there's an error, just so we know that it's an error from the post function and nothing else. And finally, I promise we're almost at the finish line. We need to grab the title from the piece of data. So title equals to await request.json. And basically here we're telling the post function to just wait and grab the title from the front end. So the data that's coming from the front end, it should have a title name. So if there is one, then check it out basically. And finally, we need to write course, const course like this, await db.course.create, just like this. And within here, we need to write data. And finally, title. And down here, we need to write return next response. Oh, okay, my bad. So we imported next request. It's actually next response. So my bad about that. Next response.json course. So, okay, what the hell is going on, right? What the hell just happened is what you're probably saying. Essentially, here we are talking directly to the database. We created a variable called course where we are awaiting the database, which is from Prisma client. So we're basically we're talking to the Prisma database, and we're grabbing the course model. It's in lowercase terms. I don't know why they do that, but the course is just the course model. It's the one with the title and the ID, and we're telling it to create a new title, okay? And obviously here return the NextJS course. And so if we go back and refresh this, because it will probably not work right away, and we have the NeonTech open as well. So NeonTech like this with, hopefully it works. I don't even know what's going on here. There we go. So in here, in our databases or tables, we have the course here, and there's no query to happen. So if we go back in here, let's just create something new, okay? I apologize if this is a little bit confusing, but let's just do this real quick. And in here, let's just name a course. Let's just call it hello course, all right? And let's see if anything happened. We can see that we have a post 200. A 200 is very good because that means it was a success. And if we go back into our Neon console, if we refresh the page, we can see if anything was stored. And there we go. You can see that this is huge. We got the title, which is stored, as well as an ID that is along with that, which we need one. And we just created a database to store stuff. You literally just did that. And look, I know that this isn't crazy. You know, we're just storing a title, but all of my application, most of your application is going to be in this sort of field. in my courses creations app, for example, where I create courses, there is an add functionality where I can create new courses. You can see here I create one and it has a bunch of forms. These are all mini versions of what you just built. So we have the prices, the learning outcomes. These are all exactly the exact piece of code that I used to grab the user inputs, have a database, and then send data in between both. And again, okay, so we essentially just made a front end that allows us to put in the user inputs with a form from Zod, use form. This is just, look, if you're still confused, we're just managing the title in here. Okay, we're just managing the title. And in here, we're creating a way to send that data to the back end through having a submit function and tracking the user's input by having a form.control and a handle submit within the form. And we obviously created the PrismaDB, but this is it. This is the core basics of creating a database in NextJS and what I've used for creating all of my applications. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I will leave the GitHub repository to this down below. So if you need anything, then I will leave that down below, as well as if you have any questions or issues or anything like that, we do have the Discord for any sort of questions. So make sure you join that if you do need anything. In my opinion, it's the best freaking place in the world for anything, but more specifically, if you have any questions in terms of the database, then let me know in the Discord. But yeah, happy coding, good luck, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.